Hey everyone, today I want to talk about debuffs, or more precise, about how we can manage our debuff uptime on targets like guild bosses. As we can see in this example, the defense reduction debuff from Astrid is always dropping off the guild boss. But there might be a reason why we want a specific debuff to have an uptime as high as possible to maximize our damage. Overall, the underlying mechanic to increase debuff uptime on our targets is the same for every hero I've seen so far. To explain this mechanic, I want to go through a few heroes as examples, so you can get a feel for the mechanic and apply it to your own heroes. I'll be using the following heroes as examples: Mary, who applies physical and magical damage vulnerability; Greed and Astrid, who apply magic resistance reduction and defense reduction respectively; and finally, Volker, who applies a 30% damage reduction debuff on her target, which I think is the most complex case. First, I like to start with Mary, since increasing her debuff uptime is the easiest and doesn't involve chances. To understand how we can increase her debuff uptime, we first need to find out how long her debuff duration is. We see in this clip that the duration of the physical and magical damage vulnerability is the same as the duration of the slow debuff. From the slow duration of 1.5 seconds, we must now conclude on the duration of the other two debuffs, since they are not given. Accordingly, the duration of her vulnerability debuffs is also 1.5 seconds. Next, I want to look at her attack speed. Her attack interval is 2.0 seconds. This means her attack interval is longer than the debuff duration, and therefore she has no chance to refresh her debuffs on the target before they run out. The fix for this is to add attack speed, so her attack interval goes below 1.5 seconds. This has the advantage that not only does her debuff uptime increases, but she is also able to profit from her own debuff and not just their teammates. When we press the attack interval below the debuff duration of 1.5 seconds, we still sometimes see her debuff dropping and sometimes they are refreshed earlier. I think this is because of the boss movement, which sometimes increases the flight time of her icicles. For me, this means the more attack speed Mary has, the better, to increase the debuff uptime on raid bosses. When her attack interval reaches 1 second, I've observed 100% debuff uptime so far on this specific boss. Our next case, Greed, applies a magic resistance reduction with a 50% chance for 4 seconds and has a base attack interval of 3.5 seconds. If there wasn't a chance of 50% of applying the debuff, we would be fine with our attack speed because the attack interval is already lower than the debuff duration, which means we should hit our target again before the debuff runs out. But since the debuff only refreshes with a 50% chance, on average, we would need an attack interval of 2 seconds. I can get this attack interval down to 1.7 seconds. In case you haven't realized yet, attack speed reduces the time between attacks by a percentage value. In both cases, Mary and Greed, we reduce the attack interval to around 50% of their base attack interval, from 2 seconds to around 1 second and 3.5 to around 1.7 seconds, respectively. But back to the case. With chances, we always have the problem that with several attacks in a row, all can apply the debuff or none. Because of this, finding gear which decreases attack speed even further might be a bit difficult. I personally would go with an attack interval of 2 seconds for Greed and base my expectations around the fact that on average, every second hit refreshes the debuff. The next case, Astrid, can apply a 20% defense reduction to her targets, or 30% when the skill is fully upgraded. This debuff can be extremely strong when we struggle to stack enough attack power to overcome the defense of different monsters. Her chance of applying defense reduction is 20%, and the debuff duration is 5 seconds. With an attack interval of 2.6 seconds, we don't even get 2 chances to reapply the debuff by auto attacks. On average, she needs 5 attacks to refresh the debuff. Luckily, by upgrading her skill, we get another 10% trigger chance, so on average, she would apply her debuff every 3rd attack. I would personally try to halve her attack interval to 1.3 seconds, so she is able to attack 3 times while her debuff is up. Not only does this greatly increase the debuff uptime, she also does 2 more attacks inside the debuff time frame, which means she profits more from her own debuff. The last hero I want to talk about is Volker. She has a 30% chance to gain a stack of Scarlet Ferment. At 5 stacks, The next attack consumes 2 stacks and she applies a 30% damage reduction for 3 seconds. With a base attack interval of 2.4 seconds, she applies a debuff every 14.4 seconds on average. Even with half the attack interval, her debuff would, on average, have a downtime that is too long to rely on her random chance to apply it. This means that optimizing for attack speed in this case might not be the best idea. Still, when we look at her ultimate, she can regenerate 2 stacks of Scarlet Ferment with each ultimate use. This gives us control back on when to apply the debuff. So personally, I think going for attack speed to get the first 3 Scarlet Ferment stacks up to have them ready for the ultimate use is a valuable strategy, because you might need a damage reduction at a certain point. I have now gone through my examples. I hope you've gotten a feel for when we need to reduce the attack interval to increase debuff uptimes. The goal, if possible, is to decrease the attack interval with attack speed below the debuff duration, so we can refresh the debuff before it drops off the target. Also, if you pick the debuffs specifically for a certain fight, the damage of the zero might be secondary anyway, and sacrificing crit rate and crit damage seems like a valuable alternative to me without going into the math behind it. If you know of some heroes where you use attack speed to get the best out of your debuffs or buffs, or have something else to add, feel free to write it in the comments. If you found this topic helpful, feel free to like and subscribe, and have a nice day.